Look, you don't get these moments often, right? Moments when it feels like the whole country is engaged in the same conversation. But right now, there is an amazing amount of energy going into just thinking about what it means to be Canadian. Art and culture have a huge role to play in that. The group chat's here. Let's get into it. I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and this is Commotion. Okay, look, the biggest conversation in the country right now is this trade war and all of the unknowns and how to navigate all those unknowns. But on the show, we have been talking about Canadian culture and how artists are showing up to meet this moment. Because it's not dramatic to say that the future of the country is at stake. I mean, you literally heard the Prime Minister say that President Trump wants the Canadian economy to soften or collapse so that we're easier to annex. That's pretty explicit stuff. So today on the podcast, we want to talk about the hard work the culture can do right now, because I think it's easy to wave the flag and double down on CanCon, or maybe boo the American national anthem, or even change the words to ours.
True patriot love that only us command.
That's Chantal Kreviazuk putting her own twist on O Canada. But look, today we are talking about the role of Canadian artists and how they can maybe meet this moment right now. And how do they sort of see patriotism in a way that feels sustainable, that makes Canadian culture stronger and more vital for the long haul. For their first time on the show, the rapper, producer, Juno winner, Peabody winner, Emmy winner, and everything else winner, the old prince himself, Shad. Welcome to the show, friend.
Good to see you.
Hey, first of all, can I just say, if you got a Juno and a Peabody and an Emmy, if you win a Grammy, you'd be the first person to JPEG. You know what I mean? I don't know, just saying. It's not an EGOT, it's a JPEG. I'm just putting that out there. Just floating that as an option for you. And then, of course, yeah, of course, man. And then also the actor and director and actor and writer and director, Canadian Screen Award winner, Emmy winner, Dutra Award winner, Jay Baruchel. Welcome to the show, friend.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. Listen, I'm happy to have both of you. I think a lot of people are waking up to this conversation for the first time, but what I like is that both of you have been engaged in it for some time. Jay, you and I just had a version of this conversation on stage at the Kingston Canadian Film Festival just a few days ago. But look, a lot of people are maybe realizing for the first time that they've been mostly consuming U.S. culture, maybe kind of passively, like without even really it necessarily occurring to them that they're watching U.S.-made shows or listening to U.S.-made music. There is so much of it, and it just kind of washes over you, and then you just say, well, those are the TV shows that are available. And then they are maybe looking to change that. You, Jay Baruchel, you've been banging this drum for some time, the Canadian movies and Canadian television drum for some time. What does it feel like for you now to have the whole country maybe catch up to a place that you've been at for some time?
Oh, well, that's a lovely question. A thoughtful one that I think, I hadn't even asked myself that. I guess I'm just, I'm psyched and kind of inspired and a bit sort of surprised at this, this kind of awakening of choose your dirty word, patriotism, nationalism. Either way, it's been heartening. And I kind of always, I'll say that I had doubts about how strong that strain was in our national identity, and would it weather, a storm, for all the reasons you mentioned, and the fact that, the average Canadian seems to have a working knowledge of random U.S. how representatives and stuff like that we did, there's just not a reciprocal exchange of information. We talked about that in our chat in Kingston on the weekend, about a sort of kind of cultural complacency that can exist in mass media in English in this country, can exist in certain parts of it. So this is all to say that, I think this is the kick in the arse that we've sort of needed, and I hope our country gets to blossom a bit more as a result of it.
I like that in your answer you said, choose your dirty word in terms of nationalism and patriotism, because I do think that is a part of how we approach this conversation. It feels a little bit new to some folks. It feels a little bit like, how do I wear this particular outfit? And I'm going to get to that in just a moment. But Shad, let me come to you. When I think about your music, I think about music that is distinctly rooted here, distinctly rooted in the conversations that we are having in this country, and maybe carving out a space where, like, you know what, I know what other conversations sound like, but this is different because it originates right here, and there's something about it that makes it different from music that's made anywhere else. When you take a step back, what is the role for you for Canadian artists in this particular moment?
Yeah, I appreciate that comment. When I think about hip hop is so much about place, right? And situating yourself, and I like the word rooted, and being rooted in a place, and finding a way to take pride in that place and where you come from, and that community, right? And specificity. And so I love that's part of the work that art can do. It can situate people, reflect their own stories back to them. It can help them take pride in who they are and where they come from and where they're rooted, right? So I think that's just a thing hip hop has certainly always done, but I think all art can play that role.
Yeah, I think about that as sort of an invitation to say, look around you and sort of figure out what is the thing that makes your place distinct from any other place. And that can be as granular as your neighborhood and as grand as your country. Like, there's sort of like a big range of that. But part of becoming a country, part of zooming into the thing that gives you our collective identity, saying, no, we do things a little bit differently here, and this is what that feels like. This is what it feels like to sort of for us to move through these different spaces. Jay, I want to rewind 6 years ago. You were on Conan's show, and then this is what you said.
It's such a cliche that Canadians are kind and nice and sort of inclusive. Is that true? Like, when you think about yourself and your family, is it ingrained if you're Canadian?
I would say, I'd say that, like, two big pastimes in my household were self-doubt and not wanting to inconvenience strangers.
That's actually what I like to do on the weekends too, man. I like to self-doubt and not inconvenience strangers. But I do think there's a truth to that. But also, it maybe doesn't serve you in moments like this one. So how do you think that self-doubt and being like, oh, I don't want to be too much of a bother, how does that show up for us in a moment like this one?
Well, hopefully it serves the same role as the opposition does in Parliament. Hopefully it tempers our patriotism and our nationalism. I think that, like, one can blindly love the tribe that they're part of, right? But to participate in one's country and to take pride in that process, I think is. That's a conditional thing, I think love can be unconditional, but I don't think any relationship should ever be. Therefore, I think that self-doubt and that sort of nightmare fear of inconveniencing others, I think those are kind of nice traits that are how you build a functioning society. Those are ingredients for how people for neighbors being kind to one another, and deciding en masse as a collective that looking out for the people at the bottom of the food chain, looking out for everyone in the food chain, is something that we all should own a piece of, right? And so anyway, so this is all to say that, like, I think a patriotism informed by reason and fact and logic can only be more strengthened.
Yeah, what I like about that, Chad, is that I think Jay's sort of issuing an invitation to say it's actually okay to celebrate who we are, and also okay to keep the self-doubt. You don't have to get rid of it. You don't have to get rid of this idea of, like, hey, let's keep questioning whether we are on the right course. Because we do sometimes, I think, even inherit the ways that Americans think about patriotism, which tends to be, like, a little bit more unwilling to critique the country. And I think, like, what Jay's offering here is a distinctly Canadian path, which is to say, please be proud of this place. And also part of that is to say, hey, are we making all the right decisions? Because I think, like, some artists do wear the flag on their sleeve, on their arm, but also, like, historically, there has been this discomfort around being like, Canada is the best. How do you think about those two sentiments kind of living side by side?
Yeah, I love what Jay said about you don't have to be unthinking to have a sense of love for place. We love home because it's home. And that doesn't mean you have to be unthinking and unreflective about it and uncritical about it. But it's okay to say, I love this place because it's where I am, it's where I'm rooted. But at the same time, it can be better. We can progress it. The values that we love about this place, or things we love about this place, are actually things we have to fight for and we have to progress, or else they move in the other direction. You know what I mean? That's also part of the work that art and culture can do. And I like the point you put on that question too. Canada is the best. Canada's not the best. We all know Canada's not the best. Like, we all went outside today. Like, it is not the best. It's but it's home. Home. So we love it. And we're gonna fight for it, and we're gonna fight to make it better.
There is a version of patriotism, Jay, that says that because it's home, it's the best, right? Like, and that's not to say that like it's the best by any kind of metric that is to be measured by health outcomes or education levels or like anything else. But it's to be measured by like saying like, I think it's the best because I live here and it means something to me. And I specifically relate that to like Kingston, Ontario, because like when people ask me about Kingston, I'm like, that's my hometown, it's the best. And if you're from Kingston, I'm happy to have many conversations with you about all the shortcomings of Kingston, Ontario. But if you're not from Kingston, buddy, back off. That is not your town. You cannot participate in this conversation. And I do think that actually scales up nationally. So how do you think about this notion of Canada being the best and being able to sort of wear that while tempering maybe some of its outcomes?
Yeah, well, because I think there's again, even if I thought this country was a huge pile of garbage, it'd be my pile of garbage, and I would fight for it until the last drop of blood left my body. All right, like honestly, and that's not even something I have to get to. That's just in me. It also helps that I sincerely believe that the average person has a better shot here than pretty much anywhere else. And so I think that like the statistics, back up the brain backs up the heart for me in this situation, which again only increases my patriotism. But this beautiful thing, this beautiful fragile Canadian project that is worth fighting for, ceases to be so, or decreases in value if we lose sight of those things that are worth fighting for. And the fact that by all the metrics that matter in terms of education and healthcare and childcare and happiness, but by almost every measure, our people are thriving, and that's the thing that's worth fighting for. So yes, it is Sir Isaac Brock and Queenston Heights and all the rest of it, and I feel that stuff as much as anybody. True, obvious. Go figure. A guy with a red maple leaf tattoo over my heart and a bunch of fucking Spitfire paintings behind me feels that way. But it also helps that all of it is informed by reality. And so yeah, I think we are kind of waking up to just how tenuous this thing is, and how fragile it is, and how the world is better with Canada in it.
If folks are just joining us, my name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and this show is called Commotion. And we're working through this idea of patriotism today and the role that culture can play in it. Jay Baruchel is here, and Shad is here. Jay, I'm worried about the things that we look to remind us what Canadian identity is, because a lot of those symbols have changed in meaning. Like, we don't have Gord Downie anymore. Hockey has been on the decline for some time, although I think like that Four Nations final might have changed some of that a little bit. But like, when you talk about these ideas of maybe looking around you to figure out, how to love a place, what are you looking to remind you of this sort of shared cultural identity?
Oh, damn. That's a huge question that requires like a really nuanced answer. But I think I'd like to think that I was already doing that. For years, My wife and I have put a huge emphasis on, you know, prioritizing the Canadian thing over a foreign thing.
Hmm.
Books, music, clothing, food, art, painting, history, all of it. And we've just always endeavored to keep a space in our lives for that and to prioritize that, because the free market won't always do that. And so sometimes you have to, and what we were talking about in our chat in Kingston on the weekend about like the two volume knobs, right? Of like, if one radio station is turned up to max and yours is just not, it's on you to, sadly, you have to turn the knob up or turn the knob down, right? The other knob, this is so stupid. I'm so sorry I took us down this knob path.
I like the analogy. I like the analogy. Keep going.
But yeah, so I just think that like, it's, so to answer your question, I am trying to continue to do my best to participate in my neighborhood, in my city, in my province, in my country.
I like that. The reason I like the volume knob analogy is because if American culture is automatically set at a 9, you have to figure out how to set your own sort of internal compass to be like, my radar for Canadian culture has to be set at a 14. You know, it just has to be that much louder just so that something can break through, just so something can break through. And that is a part of sort of being actively engaged in this. Shad, I'm going to get to you in a moment about this question, about this idea of like the things that you're looking for to remind you of Canadian identity. But I want to tell you, Jay, what is working for me right now.
This is what the failed patriarchy looks like. I'm so sick of you beta male SJWs.
We are not SJWs. I actually identify as a wood nymph.
Super weird.
Okay, so that's Jay. That's Jay on. That's Jay playing Hard Right Jay. Unbelievable performance, by the way, on Letterkenny. But I gotta say, like shows like Letterkenny and Shoresy, like they are doing a specific kind of lifting, which is to say, these stories deserve to be noticed because they're made here and they represent a part of the stories that we don't often tell about this country. And to me, I just want to get your idea of like, what heavy lifting do you think a show like Shoresy or Letterkenny is doing? That's to you, Jay.
Me?
Yeah, that's you.
Yeah. I absolutely think that these things become pillars of how we relate to each other and how we relate to the world. You know, I think that without a Trailer Park Boys, there's no Goon. Without a Goon, I don't know that there's a Letterkenny. And ultimately, without a Letterkenny or a Shoresy, I don't know that there's a Les Chambres Rouges, Red Rooms, or any of the rest of it. And so I think that these are engines, but also they're good. Like it's good. It's, you know, these are not necessary evils, right? You know, and I think that
They're
like,
not vegetables.
Yeah, no, correct. These aren't just like we have to get our fucking nutrients or something. Like this is good stuff, and we can be proud of it. But it also like and even if you don't connect to it, know that a thing you do connect to exists. You know, is allowed to exist in part because of it.
Shad, same question to you when it comes to Canadian culture. What are you looking to that is like, oh, I'm holding on to this. This is giving me hope. This is giving me, you know, a way to smile, but also maybe just literally giving me a way to connect to a larger idea of what it feels to be from this place.
Well, I've always listened to a lot of Canadian music. I've always felt like there's enough Canadian music that I think is great that I don't really need to pay too much attention to what else is going on in the world. So that's long been a feeling of mine, and something I take pride in the fact that we support music on that level where people can make music that they believe in, that tells stories that are, like I was saying earlier, rooted in a place and have some specificity to them without being isolationist, you know, without waving the flag in an unthinking way, but are just, you know, genuinely rooted in a place and a love of home. So I've long felt that with music and a range of music, and that's part of that's part of what I think is kind of quintessentially Canadian as well, is we just have such a range of voices, and a kind of a high tolerance, to use the classic Canadian word, like a high tolerance for that range. And but outside of culture, just in terms of ideas, like what Jay said about average people thriving, that's something that to me feels very, I associate with Canada.
Right.
Best not in the sense of having, the biggest, most successful tech companies or universities or baseball teams or whatever, but in terms of average people being able to experience a level of safety and dignity. That's also something that to me that's our conception of what best means.
I have to say, just in terms of like the things that are working for me, and in terms of taking pride in Canadian culture, I'd like to play you, good sir, what's also working for me.
I recall when I was small, like 1999, Taylor was hands in your pockets. Everyone's watching. I know they do it, but that's not an option. Show caution. Don't let it show, though. Keep up your grades. Clean up your fade. Make them all laugh. Take a seat and behave. You need to be brave. We're still afraid, though. Still rise, still looking, yeah. Still rise,
Come on. That's Shad. That's you. That's you. But on this spot, you got this. That's a Toby joint. It's got you. It's got Hawaii. It's got jazz. It's got edgy. Look, do we think we are paying better attention to Canadian hip hop right now? Like, is that something that we're seeing right now?
Well, I mean, as you know, it's been a difficult last few months for Canadian hip hop, but I do think overall.
Why? What happened? No, I'm joking.
But listen, I do think Toronto, having studied a little bit of hip hop history, Toronto has a very deep history with hip hop, deeper than most American cities, actually. Most people don't know that.
Yeah.
But, there's a deep history there. There's a lineage there. I think we've done a good job recently of celebrating that lineage. I've seen the celebration of people like Mishi Me, pioneers like Maestro, people like Cardinal. I've seen that, Dream Warriors. I've seen that happen more in the last couple of years, especially since the 50th anniversary of hip hop, which was just a couple of years ago. So, really celebrating that culture in Canada has been something I've seen more of in the last couple of years. But yeah, like I said, the range of music in Canada is incredible. We have electronic artists like Caribou and K Tronada. We have obviously rappers like Drake and R&B artists and indie rock. We punch well above our weight and have for a long time. And that's because of commitments that we make as a country. That's funded, that's supported, that's a value that we have. And again, it's a different idea of what best means. It doesn't mean you dominate the entire world with exporting your culture. It means that you make things that are genuinely creative and interesting and serve one society, our society first, and then after that, have the ability to touch the rest of the world. Again, just a different value system that I resonate with and that I think is worth fighting for.
Two things. First of all, I got to acknowledge that we lost Jay. We lost Jay Baruchel. The connection has dropped. And also we have got like literally a minute left here. But just in the last minute that we have left, I just want to acknowledge the word that you use, which is the word lineage. And I think that's important because part of all of this, part of sort of looking around and paying attention to what this country has produced, culturally speaking, is acknowledging that like there is a weight of inheritance, right? There's a weight of sort of saying some stories have been told before us and we get to continue evolving those stories. And that's the joy of being from a place, is being in conversation with the other stories that have been told in that place. And it's not lost on me that like you and I are both, descendants of refugees arriving in this country. Like that's a part of the fabric of the stories that we get to tell in a place like this one. Shad, I got to leave it there. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your energy. Man, you are the best. Also, do we have Jay back for being like, Jay, goodbye? I also got to say goodbye to you, pal. No, I don't think we do. Okay, we got to leave it there. But Shad and Jay, this has been a tremendous opportunity, and I'm so grateful for your time and energy. This has been wonderful. Shadrach Kabango is you're the best, man. Shadrach Kabango is a rapper and producer who goes by the name of Shad. Jay Baruchel is an actor, writer, and director. That is it for the show today. We are not done with this conversation. We are going to keep having this conversation. We're never going to be done with this conversation because I think it's opened a door and we're going to walk through it. In the meantime, this is Commotion. I'm Elamin. See you tomorrow.